Welcome to Point Blank. This is your host, Panama Crypto. Today, our guest is CryptoHustle. He's one of the first OGs I started following back in 2017 when I started trading actively crypto. Welcome, CryptoHustle. Very happy to have you on Point Blank.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here. Thanks, Panama.
Sweet. Let's get going. So, who is CryptoHustle?
CryptoHustle is just kind of a term that I came up with years ago to symbolize what I was about at the time. Got into crypto predominantly because of decentralized finance and wanting to find solutions, kind of changed the system, saw it as a kind of a proactive approach in doing such using technology and decentralization. But really the hustle part stemmed from being tired of being broke, right? I was tired of being broke. So I decided to hustle really hard into crypto, hustling double time, went full time into it in 2015. I got into it a bit before then, but really started taking it seriously in 2015 as far as making money. And so that's when CryptoHustle was born. I was just find as many ways as I could to make money in crypto, as long as it was ethical, of course.
What you used to do before crypto?
I did all kinds of stuff. Little of this, little of that. I used to be in sales. I've done fundraising, odd jobs, done construction, whole bunch of different things. Kind of consider myself autodidactic. So taught on a lot of stuff, pretty much most of the important things in life that I've learned of being self-taught.
So you probably experienced Mt. Gox and all these hacks that happen in the beginning of the life of Bitcoin and crypto.
I dodged a Mt. Gox bullet. I almost signed up for Mt. Gox. I remember in 2013, I was looking for ways to buy Bitcoin, and I saw Mt. Gox at the time, and just for some reason, I just kind of decided against it. My first crypto purchase was actually in a coffee shop. Bitcoin purchase was in a coffee shop, just meeting somebody peer-to-peer.
Buying or selling drugs?
No drugs. Just cash for BTC. Back in the day, that was that for me in Canada, that was the easiest way to do it. People would post ads on Kijiji and Craigslist and stuff, and so I mean they had a premium and stuff, but because I was a noob, I didn't care at the time. I just wanted to get my hands on some. And, my first major Bitcoin transaction after I bought some, I basically got scammed. So my first major BTC purchase, I lost my BTC, and that's how I got initiated by fire.
How you get scammed?
I tried to order some Butterfly Labs.
The unfamous Butterfly mining rigs.
Yeah, I got scammed twice. Initially, I thought mining was the edge. So like late 2013, 2014. So I got scammed on Butterfly Labs, and then I went to buy the first ASIC miner for Script for Litecoin, which was Alpha Technologies. I think my buddy Bitlord, we talked about that. He got scammed on that too. I'm sure a bunch of OGs got scammed on that one as well. But they didn't deliver anything. Alpha Technologies didn't deliver anything either. And those were, major purchases. And then I built my own GPU rig, but that lost a bunch of money too. I just burned a lot of money on electricity. I did mine Dogecoin in its first week when it launched. That's kind of what I started cutting my teeth on. I was in Bitcoin a little bit before then, but just mostly like faucet sites and stuff like that. But Dogecoin was the first altcoin that I started mining. But really, I'd lost money on that. So 2014 for me was just kind of losing money. Fortunately, I didn't have a ton of money to lose at the time. So the cost of that education was pretty low. But I think a lot of noobs can relate. Sometimes your initiation into crypto is just...
How'd you bounce from something like that?
Well, perseverance and just really, I don't know. I saw the opportunity there. I believed in the
Still have faith after all that?
I did, and it wasn't easy initially. Like, even though I didn't lose a lot of money, when you don't have a lot of money, it seemed like a lot of money at the time, right? Especially like you get super excited. Your first initial transactions are getting scammed. The first one was like getting scammed like a few $1,000s or whatever, which in hindsight, it's not a big deal. But at the time that was for me. But it's just perseverance really. And I'm really glad I didn't quit. I was tempted to, I was tempted, but I'm glad I didn't because crypto changed my life. So
Which do you think would be your best and worst crypto decisions?
yeah, I think perseverance definitely. Deciding to go full time into crypto in 2015, I think was one of my best decisions. I saw that the price pretty much did a full retrace pre-bubble, pre-bubble, pre-December bubble went down to $166, $200, and then it ranged from $200 to $300 for about 11 months. And I knew there was an opportunity at the time, so I quit doing everything else, and that's when I focused all my energy in those 11 months, just doing full time as much as I could in crypto. And that was probably one of the best decisions because that was the accumulation lows for that market cycle. Worst decisions, I think, were definitely the trying to buy those ASIC minings, trying to cut my teeth on mining.
How do you manage to make that decision of leap of faith into full-time crypto? Because many people in crypto like see all these people that do this full-time, but it's actually not that easy.
I was really determined that I wanted to be financially independent. I didn't want to work for anybody. I want to have enough resources where I didn't have to sell my time for money. And so I saw an opportunity, just looking back at the previous history at the time. We came off that massive bubble at the end of 2013, 2014. And when I saw the full retrace happen, I just had a strong sense that we hadn't hit market saturation and that we'd likely get another large market cycle. So if I persevered and I learned from my lessons and I managed risk better, that I would likely be able to hit my goals, and I did.
Switching gears a bit here, how is Canada faring in crypto adoption?
I've been doing a lot of traveling after the crazy year in 2017. I decided it was time to stop hustling so hard and just kind of travel the world a bit and enjoy life a bit and try to make the crypto thing a little bit more passive than active. So I'm no longer glued to my computer all day, every day. I mostly do other things, and it's more of a passive thing for me now, and entertainment too. But compared to what's Canada compared to other countries, I think it's not too bad. It's not really draconian. Probably the regulations aren't necessarily as strict as the US per se, but I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. We don't have crazy user adoption in Canada, but there's certainly enough people getting into that, have been getting into it. So it's probably like somewhere in the middle.
Are the exchanges highly regulated?
To be honest, there aren't really a ton of Canadian exchanges these days. I'm sure there are some, but I mostly, if I want to cash out and stuff, mostly just use Kraken now because it's very, very easy to deposit and withdraw for Canadians if you have a Kraken account. So, and they've been around for what, since 2012 or whatnot, and they haven't had major issues like hacks and stuff. So I just use them for that sort of thing, please. So they've seen some stuff. They've been around for a while, and I just haven't seen a lot of drama or hacks or losses or anything like that. And their trading engine, everything got a lot better since the old days. It used to be a little bit glitchier several years back, but they really cleaned a lot of that up.
On the same topic of Canada, can you enlighten us? How is the taxation laws in Canada for crypto?
Capital gains in Canada can go up to about 26%. That's the high end on that. We don't have difference between Canada and the US, as we don't have the short versus long-term capital gains in Canada. It's all just capital gains, and then the percentage scale fluctuates based on income and how much one sells. So that's kind of really the main difference. Crypto to crypto trades are considered taxable events. So even if it doesn't touch fiat, they still consider that taxable event. Not too complicated, but you do need some kind of software or algorithm to figure all of it out, especially like Satoshi values, stuff like that.
On that same line, what would be the best approach to avoid some taxation in Canada?
The best approach that I found,
well, if you're in crypto, obviously.
Yeah, that what I started doing and because I wasn't super aware of all the taxation consequences till after 2017, when I had a massive tax bill that I ended up paying. I just realized what I did is I changed I stopped trading altcoin to BTC pairs, because that could create it uses another thing with Canada is it uses cost averaging accounting instead of FIFO, first in first out, or LIFO, last in first out. It uses cost averaging method. So what that means is that, let's say you were to buy Bitcoin at $8,000 and sell it at $10,000, you'd think that perhaps there'd be a $2,000 profit there. But let's say you had bought Bitcoin from previous years. The average price of your Bitcoin from previous years will get averaged in to your $8,000 buy. So even though you think that it's only $2,000 gain or whatnot, it could actually be more if your longer term holdings are at a lower average price. And there's no real way to separate those capital buckets if you're using the same cryptocurrency. So what I'll generally do is, if I'm invested in something really long term and that has a lower cost average, what I'll do is, because all the crypto markets are correlated, I'll look for markets where I don't have any longer term holdings, and I'll buy those on the fiat pairs instead of the BTC pairs. That way it keeps the accounting clean. I know exactly how much I make on each transaction, so on and so forth. So just keeps it a lot cleaner, keeps the accounting cleaner. It's less mess. I know there's often a lot of debate between, the altcoin BTC pairs versus the altcoin USD pairs, but I just find for myself it's much easier just to do everything against the fiat pairs, mostly USD, since that tends to be the most liquid pairings. And things have changed a lot since the old days. In the old days, you didn't have fiat pairings for most coins. It was all against BTC. Now we have selection. You could trade against Euro, USD. Most altcoins, when they launch on an exchange, will have a USD or a USDT pairing. So I can isolate and separate those things. Whereas like if I did it against BTC, it would mess up my accounting for my long-term BTC holdings, which could have unintended tax consequences for like midterm swings.
But if you touch stable coins like USDT, would that be considered swapping from crypto to crypto, or it would be considered?
No, that would be more considered more of a fiat pairing, because since it's pegged to fiat market. So because the USDT is usually on 1-to-1 or maybe slightly off from USD, so it's usually not a big deal. So it's easy to determine what the tax consequences will be.
This episode is brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange that makes possible to trade with leverage on legacy markets from a single Bitcoin-based account. Why so many exit scams of crypto exchanges in Canada? Were you affected by any of those?
I was affected by the Quadriga. I did lose some capital on that. Fortunately, I do risk management with exchanges. So at the time I diversified across multiple exchanges, and obviously I don't keep all my money on exchanges, and I'm diversified in other markets and stuff like that. And so it wasn't a huge impact. I mean, a loss is a loss. So still, at the end of the day, it's still, it'd be preferential. There was an opportunity cost there, because I could have shoveled all that money in at the bottom capitulation with the other money that I shoveled in. Could have bought more Tezos or whatever when it was capitulating, the accumulation low. So there's an opportunity cost there. But whatever, that's the nature of the game, right? Sometimes, if you're sometimes you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. So that's just cost of business. Or if you're a boxer, you're going to get punched in the face, right? Don't go to boxing if you don't get punched in the face, pretty much.
Is the regulations, is Canada laxative in terms on exchange opening doors?
They've been tightening up a lot since the Quadriga thing. That was our big historical scandal. So the government's been involved and the lawyers and all that stuff. So I think it's definitely tightening up a lot more. I think at the time they were running an exchange with hundreds of millions of dollars and they hadn't even filed a tax return in years. So that's how lax it was before.
Yeah, basically that guy vanished in India and somehow managed to forge a death certificate, send it back to authorities, and then everybody that had Bitcoins in Quadriga couldn't get their Bitcoin.
Yeah, he's like smoking cohiba somewhere on a beach right now.
Switching topics completely here. How's Canada tackled COVID?
The same kind of measures as a lot of other countries, just like shutting down mid to small size brick and mortar businesses. They even closed between provinces too, interprovincial. They closed the borders internationally, but even interprovincial, they closed it. Those are all opened up recently. But you weren't even allowed to go visit friends or family or anything like that. So just pretty much had to stay home. For me, it didn't really impact me all that much, except for international traveling, because I stay home a lot anyways. With the internet, I was fine, and I just come off a bunch of trips, so I didn't so much mind taking a bit of a break. But obviously, it's annoying to have our rights restricted.
Do you need a safe passage to transit on the streets?
There hasn't really been anybody monitoring walking on the streets or anything like that, but there have been police checkpoints on the roads.
And
so
if you encounter them, what do you have to do? Like, do you need to have like some sort of document that allows you to be?
They basically just ask you, where you're going and this and that. And if they don't deem it as essential, like if you weren't buying groceries or whatever, then they tell you to go back home, pretty much. Oh, and another thing, they were doing legally doing geo-tracking on people's phones, working with cell phone providers to track people's GPS locations, stuff like that on phones, which can kind of get insidious because technically that's not legal, but this gave them an excuse to kind of give people notice that it was legal, which can have other consequences in future for people's privacy. So that's definitely something we need to be vigilant about as far as protecting our privacy rights. Can be a slippery slope. Sometimes these types of events can be leveraged or used to take a little bit more power from people, right? Yeah, it seems like after every major event or crisis that happens every decade or so, there's always, society always changes just a little bit more, where we lose a little bit more freedom.
Now, putting our tinfoil hat, do you think COVID was engineered?
Obviously, I have my opinions. I don't know anything guaranteed. I've kind of trying to remain objective about it and weighing out both sides. I do think it seems probable that it was created in a lab. At least to me, it seems like it was probable. Whether or not it was intentionally released or not might be a different debate, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was released from one of those laboratories in Wuhan. Seems like there was some evidence pointing towards that. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was. It really wouldn't. There's a lot of coincidences, right? What was that summit in October? Bill Gates Foundation, so on and so forth. They were doing a global pandemic simulation on a COVID virus hitting the world, and that just seems like a really huge coincidence to me, right? I mean, it's certainly possible, can happen. These things can happen, but I just feel like I'd have to be a pretty big coincidence theorist to lean in that direction. But what do I know, right? I'm not a biologist, so
yeah,
I know very little on as far as the technicalities of this virus.
Eventually, we will know the truth. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your backs for the ages and why?
Tezos.
Tezos for
Tezos
life.
Bitcoin. Tezos Bitcoin. No, not for life, just till the next parabolic cycle. Right. I'm not a hodl till you die, type of thing. I like, on the meta strategy, I pretty much went in heavy during that capitulation at the end of 2018. And it's kind of been my cyclical bag for this market cycle. It helps that it gives a 6% reward, staking reward, and it's been appreciating in price. So it's definitely been a nice chunk of change for sure. And I'm just, I'm waiting till the next parabolic blow off top as far as the market cycle's concerned. And that'll likely happen, in my opinion, when Bitcoin actually goes parabolic. And I think it needs to obviously break an all-time high and stuff for that to happen as far as the larger trend. Bitcoin, obviously, Bitcoin's always a staple. I feel like probably the long-term BTC I have, I don't know if I'll ever sell it, really. It just seems like just a long-term hedge, just good to have them. I don't think I'd ever want to not have BTC. Tezos, I chose that for multiple reasons. One, it's fresh market cycles, a virgin market, so it didn't have a lot of bag holders to deal with. It wasn't there, and it didn't have a huge parabolic market cycle in the last cycle because it wasn't around, at least the real supply and the real token. I think there was a futures that was maybe on Hit BTC or something like that, but that to me doesn't count. That's not real supply demand price discovery. So that was one reason. But another reason, just because, it was a network and it offered a unique value proposition at the time, right? With decentralized governance. I think decentralized governance is a noble experiment, could have other consequences as far as the overall greater society if we can make that work. I mean, think about just funding things in general. If we could vote on specific, pool our resources and vote on specific things to fund and allocate, so on and so forth, and all that kind of stuff. And my hypothesis, as far as I'm concerned at the time, was right. I formed this hypothesis before it went on its big rally, and I bought in the ICO too, but it was one of the top performers in 2019. I think Link outperformed it. That was also a new market. I didn't really get in on any of the Link action, focused on Tezos, but it pretty much outperformed just about everything. From the lows to the highs, it did over a 10x, and that's not bad for something that was on the higher market cap, right? Means it also has a lot more liquidity and volume, stuff like that. So easier to have a bigger position size, makes it easier. That's another reason why I just knew that it would probably have a higher probability of getting liquidity a lot
the treasure
faster.
chests they have on the foundation is massive.
Exactly. There's that too. They're one of the best funded projects in the space. So a lot of capital for the ecosystem to grow, as well as the STO market. I do believe the STO market has a potential to kind of be similar to the ICO market. Maybe not as crazy because there's a little bit more friction. There are a little bit more barriers to entry because you are dealing with real equity and the restrictions around that. But the great thing about that is, in STO, you're buying a tokenized company, right? You're buying shares in a real company. So you're getting something anchored to real revenue models and such versus just like vaporware shit token based on hot air, right?
So you're not actively trading this chop?
No, not really. I've stopped doing lower time frame trading. I don't really care to do that anymore. I mostly kind of like cyclical position trading. I will do swings. Like I have capital allocated specifically for degenerate dips, right? And that's pretty much all I do, like accumulation plays or degenerate dips. Like when the market dumped last March, that was a really, really nice bounce play. I saw an anomaly. BTC had dumped 40% in a single day. The last time that it happened was in 2014. It pretty much smelled like free money to me. So I did buy that dip. I did buy a bunch of stuff up in stock.
What's your take on March 13 Bitmex crash?
I think it was just basically an everything crash, right? I think Bitmex just saw mass liquidations because
perfect storm.
It was the perfect storm. Everything got liquidated. I think most other markets that were over leveraged weren't used to that level of volatility. And so I don't think there was a lot of the risk management protocols were prepared for the speed at which we saw crash in equities and futures and metals, all that kind of stuff. So nothing was spared. Everything crashed at the time. Everything was correlated at the time. Obviously, BTC could not be spared or withstand that. So it was highly correlated too, and likely because perhaps large funds and stuff needed to cover liquidations. And so if they had any BTC or whatnot, they would sell those too. That was really intense for Bitmex. So obviously they were overloaded, and we just saw a cascade of liquidations. Just meant there was a massive buying opportunity in everything. The interesting thing was I was really focused, aside from the crypto component of that was just business as usual. But what was new for me is I was really, really focused on equities at the time during those 2 weeks, because I was waiting for about 2 years to buy stocks, to buy equities, because I really base a lot of my timing on market cycles, and I knew that there's usually a recession every 7 to 10 years in the stock market, and I knew we're kind of creeping up to that. So I didn't really want to. I had capital allocated specifically for stocks, but I didn't want to dive into the waters until we got a big enough dip, big enough crash. Then when we did get it, I had allocated probably about 50% of my capital I had for equities in at the lows during those 2 weeks. I kept the other 50% because I actually thought it was going to go lower given the circumstances, and it didn't. It recovered very, very quickly. So all that's in profit. I still have cash in case there's other dips, or if we do a full recovery and breakout and stuff, then perhaps I'll allocate the rest of that based on some fundamental plays or whatnot. But I used those 2 weeks to actually build into a multi-year equity portfolio. So I'm not complaining. I was waiting for a dip. I didn't know why it would dip or whatever. I knew eventually we would see some kind of major crash or correction. The only 2 times we saw a crash that fast at that speed with a 2-month period, I think it was like 36% crash within a 2-month period. It was 1987 and 1929, right? 1987 had a very quick V-bottom recovery, very similar to what we pulled off now. 1929 did a dead cat and then rolled over into slow grind, went into a bear channel, and then went from like recession into a depression, right? Well, another buy signal is when the Fed pumped out that money printer, $8 trillion money printer, go. Anyways, that was also a buy signal right there, right? They basically signaled that they're coming in to prop up the market. They did very aggressively, and I think a lot of people are kind of a bit salty about that. But I'm not gonna argue or fight with money, right? Money's money, and if there's alpha in the market, then I'm just gonna go with it, regardless of the reasons. If it's because of the $8 trillion money print or whatever, sure. I'm not a big fan of fractional reserve banking and all that stuff either, but I'm not going to say no to money, right? Like, if it's there, it's there. If there's a dip, there's a dip. So I mostly just focus on dips. That's big dips. That's really my niche. That's what I specialize in, what I feel most comfortable in.
Good to hear your insights, man. I'm very grateful to have you here on Point. Like, maybe we can do this other time. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, you can just follow me on Twitter at CryptoHustle.
Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Yeah,
Peace.
Thanks for having me. Take care. Cheers.
This episode was brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange where you can trade without KYC on legacy markets with your Bitcoin. You can trade commodities like gold, silver, oil, even indexes and forex. Join now and get a 50% bonus on top of your deposit for trading at u.primexbt.com/Panama.